Hello, listeners. Welcome to IT Guy Who Lifts podcast. I'm your host, Palash Gupta, Diploma in Nutrition and Fitness Sciences from INFS India, and Bachelor's in Sports and Exercise Science from Loughborough University, UK. The goal of this podcast is to understand science and science based tools with the help of industry experts so that we can further optimize our training and nutrition program. With that in mind, let's jump right into today's podcast. Hello, listeners. Today, we have been graced by the presence of a world renowned sleep researcher, Dr. Neil Stanley. So, without further ado, let me pass the baton towards Dr. Neil so that he can give listeners an introduction about himself, his professional endeavors, and what fascinated him to pursue his career in this field. But before that, Dr. Neil, we have this adage on this podcast where we request and urge our guests to provide the longest possible introduction that they can because we want to know all the events which unfolded in front of our guests which made them walk down this path and hence become the person that they are today. So with that in mind, Dr. Neil, the floor is all yours.
I'm not sure how long you've got. Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be talking to you. Yeah, my name's Dr. Neil Stanley. I'm a PhD. I've been involved in sleep research and sleep medicine for 40 years now. So I started as a boy of 16, working alongside the Royal Air Force in the UK. At a place called the Institute of Aviation Medicine, which was a Royal Air Force station. And this is back in the early 1980s when the Royal Air Force still had responsibility for flying long distances. So things like shift work and jet lag and medicines that you could take if you were flying that would not impact on your ability to fly, or medicines you could take to get a good night's sleep and then safely fly the next day. So I was involved in research there for approximately 10 years. In the early 1990s, I moved to the University of Surrey, where I created and ran the world's largest sleep laboratory for doing clinical trials. So looking at the effects of medication on sleep and also daytime performance, because of course sleep and daytime are intimately linked, and if you do something to one of them, there will be an issue with the other. So I was involved in many clinical trials on many medications that have an effect on sleep. I was there for approximately 13 years, and then I moved into the National Health Service in the UK. And after that, I became a freelance sleep expert. So traveling the world talking about the importance of sleep, because whilst doing research and publishing scientific papers is good, I don't think it changes much. I think there's a lot of information out there, and I think it doesn't do much. So I thought the way to change people's sleep is to talk to people, basically. Be in a room with them, lecturing. So I do about 200 lectures a year, talking mainly to healthcare professionals, doctors and nurses about the importance of sleep, but also to the public and that sort of thing. And it's just my passion. It's all I've ever done is work in the sleep field. 2 years ago, I became director of sleep science for a company called Sleep Station, which is an online provider of cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And most countries now say that cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, sort of talking therapy, is the way to treat most people's poor sleep, because medications aren't brilliant. They're okay, but they're not brilliant. So CBTI now has become the gold standard. So Sleep Station offers that as a digital program. So if you've got a computer, you can do CBTI, but uniquely it also has human sleep coaches who help you through. And so, as I mentioned, since 40 years now, all I've done is be involved in the field of sleep. It's what I do. Behind me, there's a bookcase with the 400 sleep books that I've purchased during lockdown. I haven't in this room got the space to store the other 2,000 books that I've already got about sleep. I have historical books. I have probably the largest collection of Victorian sleep books in private hands. I write about sleep. I wrote a public science book called How to Sleep Well a couple of years ago, and I'm still involved in research. And so, yeah, it's what I do. It's, if I'm not talking about sleep, I'm reading about sleep or writing about sleep, and if I'm not doing any of those, I'm probably asleep. It's my life. So, as I say, the important thing is to communicate to the individual, not to try and change the world or try and change society, because we're all different. And so just saying do this or do that isn't going to make any difference to an individual. You've got to tell them what they need to do as an individual. So that's my life. That's what I do. So I published 38 scientific papers. By the end of next year, that will probably be 45. And I say, I spend my time, either doing media work, appearing on the BBC and whatever, and the newspapers in England, or say lecturing people. So that's me.
Definitely. I really loved your introduction, and it it gave me the fascination that you have done so much work when it comes to the sleep studies. And I can totally correlate with the fact that your initial agenda and your final agenda is to educate the masses, right? We can do all the researches in the laboratories, but if we are not able to reflect those researches for a general public, we are almost failing our job. And in the sports science, or when it comes of any kind of a science, because it's our job to make those technical researches, you can say, adaptable or easy to consume for general public, so that they can benefit from these kind of a researches and information, right?
Absolutely, and this is the problem. I was talking to some students, medical students, last weekend, who were looking for their final year project, and they wanted to do a project on sleep. And they said to me, what do you think needs to be answered? What could we do that hasn't been done before? And I actually said you would be really surprised that most of the simple questions haven't been answered.
Yeah.
We have loads. I mean, there are sleep papers that I read, and I think I've no idea what that means. I genuinely have no idea whether this is a good or a bad thing. But we still don't have those simple pieces of information that people can actually use. I mean, there is this idea that's prevalent that you need 8 hours sleep, and this has never been said. This has never been advocated by anybody. Back 500 years, people said different things. So now we've got people chasing 8 hours, even though they may not need 8 hours. And then when they don't get 8 hours, they go, oh, I've got a problem with my sleep. No, that's like, we're not all the same. We don't all need the same thing. And so this is what I'm saying. We've got these rules that we can say, do this. And then whenever I say that in a lecture, I always get one person come back to me and say, I do the complete opposite, but I sleep perfectly well. So fine, that's good. You sleep well. I'm happy for you. So any advice that we give can only be advice. It's not rules. There aren't things. There isn't a magic way to getting a good night's sleep. There aren't 10 rules. If you did this, you would sleep. There are many, let's say, individual differences between us, and we need to find out what's best for us. And that's why, as I say, I have to, be in the room with people, whether virtually or actually in the room, because I need to listen to what they're saying, not just tell them, oh, I'm an expert, I know better. That's the wrong way to do it.
100%, because we think, and a lot of people think that the science will give us a black and white answer, right? What needs to be done and what is not needed to be done. On the other hand, science gives us the concept, the understanding, but it doesn't give us the quote unquote commandments that we have to follow, because there is so much individual, and within individual we call it inter-individual differences, right? People are different, they have a different schedule, they belong to a different community, they have a different genetic makeup. So science can give us 10 options to choose from, and then you have to apply those and see what works for you and what doesn't, and take your march or journey from that point onwards, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's one piece of advice that illustrates this very, very well, and it says, don't eat spicy food before bed. Now, my version of spicy food in
Yeah,
England is going to be very different from your version of spicy food.
100%.
So, does that mean that everybody on the Indian subcontinent has bad sleep because you eat spicy food? Well, of course it doesn't. That's nonsense. So it's spicier than you would normally eat. So, if you've only ever eaten, macaroni cheese, and suddenly you have a fiery Kashmiri curry, that's probably going to disturb your sleep. But if you
100%.
live in Kashmir, that's and that's the thing. Sleep books in the UK or in America are written from this very Anglo-Saxon viewpoint, and we
Yeah,
just we say things, don't eat spicy food, which means 6 billion people we've suddenly condemned to bad sleep. But it's what you do. The same with
yeah,
caffeine. Avoid coffee. Some people are very sensitive to caffeine, some people aren't. So if you are sensitive, avoid it. If you're not, it doesn't matter whether you drink coffee or not, or whatever. And this is it. We all have a different world, and the world that I live in, of of what I consider comfort. What I look into what I think a bedroom should be, or a bed should be. That is a
yeah,
very Western view, and you go to other countries, like Japan, which is a first world country, but their view of what a bedroom is very different. I live in, I live in a situation where there is very little noise
yeah,
from the people next door. There's very, very little noise. My partner lives in Poland, and she grew up in, apartments where there is noise from all sides. That drives me mad. I can't, I'm going, it's too noisy. And she's saying, what? I can't hear
100%.
anything.
Yeah,
And I'm saying, can you not hear the neighbours telling you? No. But and so that, that's on a very small scale. We can put that onto a global scale. And as I say, we like, as you said earlier, this idea that science will give us black and white. And that's a terrible misunderstanding of what science is there for. And when it comes to sleep, all that matters to me, even after 40 years as a sleep expert, is, are you sleeping well? If you're sleeping well, don't change anything.
100%. Yeah,
If you are not sleeping well, then look at what is affecting you, because something may be annoying you that would not annoy another person. So if my partner and I go to a hotel, I'm hugely anxious about noise from the adjoining rooms, um, whereas she doesn't care about that. And so, what's right? What's correct? Who's right in that situation? But she will have something else that will be an issue for her. What I don't know, what that might be. It might be light or something like that. So we've got to find a compromise. We've got to find something that works for both of us.
Yeah,
But as I say, I have my room at home the way I want it. I sleep the way I want to, but I will never say that's the best way of doing it because it's
yeah,
my way. But as I say, if you sleep well, don't change anything. If you sleep badly, look at the thing in your life that is the problem, whatever that may be, and make that the object of your action.
100% pure good. I can truly attest to that. And the thing is, when something is working for some certain like types of people or certain amount of people, they get married to the thought that it should be working for everyone. And then they started propagating or propagating that this is the best way to do it. If you are not doing it in this way, then you are missing out, or you are not optimally following a certain set of a routine. And it applies to every field, whether it's sleep, whether it's kind of a like any sports performance, any training program, any diet program, because that particular thing has worked for them. So they think it will work. It becomes a universal truth. It should be working for everyone, but that is not the case. So I can truly attest that so much wisdom that you have just showered upon us and to the listeners as well, that something is working for you, do not try to fix what is not broken, right, in the first place. And then if something is not working for you, see why it is not working, and then we can take it forward on the action steps that we need to do. So that was one of the best like a segue that we ever had on this podcast. Thank you, Dr. Neil Stanley, for providing us with that uh, in-depth insight, I must say. So with that in mind, Dr. Neil, I would like to start with this particular topic, that what is the evolutionary perspective of sleep? Like how does sleep emerged in the first place for each and every you can say organism on this earth? Because if you see, when it comes to the right uh, you can say genetic lottery system, or you can say survival of the fittest, sleep is almost like going against all the other things, right? Because when we are sleeping, we are not providing for our family, we are not hunting for food, we are first of all, and the most important thing, that we are being exposed to predation. So when it comes to the evolutionary perspective, what are your thoughts on how sleep has fought all this way and came out on top for all the organisms?
Uh, if I could answer that, I would probably win the Nobel Prize. To be honest, the thing is, William Dement, one of the great scientists of sleep, actually said um, that sleep is important because it has survived through all of these things, and because sleep seems to be a very silly thing to do,
Yeah,
as you mentioned. So why do we still do it? And the problem is we don't really have a good answer. Um, because any theory of sleep in a human has to then equate to other animals, and then we can go from sort of mammals into more simpler animals. They seem to sleep. There is an idea that even unicellular organisms sleep. I mean, we can't say it's sleep. We can say that they stop moving basically
yeah,
for a period of time, which we believe is probably sleep. Plants, you can argue, sleep. I mean, they have a lower level of activity at night than they do during the day. Um, so if you look at it from a human point of view, there's been various theories. There was the theory that it's about saving energy. so we don't have to continually hunt. You know, the very small mice and voles and that you know have to eat their entire body weight of food each day, and if they don't, they literally die. And so they have to eat, and therefore they have to be that active. Now we're not like that. We're not living so close to the edge. We can go for days or weeks without food. So that doesn't work for humans. Then in the 1970s and 1980s, there was this idea of it was for offline processing. That we got so much information during the day that we then had to have 8 hours to process that information. And in those days, it was like computers. Computers needed to rest in each evening because they were working too hard. But now, you know, you don't have to worry about your laptop or anything like that. So that's not an issue. And then you look at the very simplistic view. Humans cannot behave or cannot act at night. Our nocturnal vision is very, very poor. So we can't see things. And if we can't see things, that means we can't work and we can't hunt. Because, you know, a tiger or a lion has much better nocturnal vision, and so it would be dangerous. So the idea was, if we couldn't do anything, we might as well, you know, hide in a cave or under a tree and sleep because we couldn't do anything. And, you know, there was a limited amount of food and there's a limited amount of firewood or coal or whatever. And so we would sleep so we didn't use up all our resources. But that might be an explanation, but that doesn't explain why, over evolution, we have such bad eyesight. Why wouldn't, you know, if nocturnal vision was a good thing, you know, we're humans, we're the top of the tree, we're the best. So why are we not good at night? So the answer is we don't know. We know that a lot of things happen during the night, most of which can happen during the day. They may happen more at night, but not necessarily exclusively. So the only things we exclusively do at night during sleep is physically grow. We only ever grow when we're asleep, and lay down memories. And those are the only two things we do. Now, okay, every animal grows. So they grow at night during sleep. Maybe that could be true. Memory, well, okay, humans need memory. We need to lay down memories. That's true. But what does a cow need to remember?
Memorize, yeah.
Yeah, you know, once you know a cow is born, and pretty much within an hour, it knows how to be a cow. You know, there's not a huge. They get bigger.
Yeah.
But there doesn't seem to be a huge development in. They don't become cleverer, if you see what I mean. And so, okay, you move away from a cow to a mouse, or to a snake, or to a spider. You know, what is going on? Why do they need to sleep? So we have a very human-centric view that we must sleep because of this, but that doesn't mean that's what animals do. Same with dreaming. You know, we dream at night, and you will have, you know, there's various theories about dreaming, you know, Freud, Jung, and various other theories, but that's a human dream.
Yeah.
Again, what does a rabbit dream of? Each night they have dreaming sleep, but what are they dreaming about? You know, and that's the problem. We can't ask them. You know, I can ask you, what did you dream about last night? I can ask you how well you slept last night. I can't do that to an animal. And this is the thing that perplexes us, that we don't know. We don't understand what's going on. maybe if a rabbit could talk, we would find a whole new world. But maybe they would be utterly bored. Maybe rabbits have nothing to say. And that, I think, is the issue, that sleep has persisted. We can trace sleep back 450 million years. So basically, humans have slept, all the time we've been humans, and long before that, we have slept, and we have slept at night, and we have slept for somewhere between 6 and 10 hours. That's really all we can say. Why we do that, why we haven't found a way of doing it quicker or better,
Yeah.
why we have that, the way sleep is, of these sleep cycles that happen. Theoretically, there would be a way of making sleep so much better. If you had to design sleep from first principles, it would be we could do it in half the time. If we could design it, but it hasn't worked that way. So, and as I say, it's had enough millions of years to have worked itself out.
Yeah.
So why it hasn't, why it's the way it is a question that nobody can answer at the moment. And that's why I'm still interested in sleep. Somebody once asked me, will we ever find the explanation of sleep? And I said, I hope not. I said, if once we get the explanation, all the mystery goes, and then then it's like, oh well, we know everything. So it's good that we don't, but it is annoying that we really don't understand sleep. As I say, at that very fundamental, nobody can tell you why we sleep. There are theories, but there is not a decent evolutionary biological argument. It just doesn't exist.
Yeah, 100%. That explains a lot, because it has it took Mother Nature this many years to finally impart this sleep thing in each and every organisms, and there must be some grander scheme of things going on uh, uh, when we zoom out the magnifying lens. But as of now, I don't think we do have any kind of explanation that what is the evolutionary perspective or the biases towards the sleep. So with that in mind, and that was a really, really great explanation, Dr. Neil, I must say. So, how would you define what sleep is, quote unquote?
Well, sleep is a period of reduced brain activity and reduced physical activity. But even that explanation doesn't really work, because when we dream, if we have an active dream, our brain waves can be more active than when we're awake.
Yeah,
So, as I say, it's a period of um, reduced mental and physical activity that occurs every 24 hours, which is reversible. I mean, that's the thing about sleep. It's easily reversible. You can just wake somebody up pretty easily most of the time. But sleep, in a way, and this is something that I've come to I'm not saying it's a unique view, but sleep is the preparation for the day. So for me, it doesn't really matter what happens at night. It's the daytime consequences. So if you have a good night's sleep, you will be happier, healthier, better able to perform, etc., etc. All of these positive things that sleep does. So in a way, I would view sleep not as what happens at night, but how that influences what happens during the day. So if you're miserable or irritable during the day, that is probably because you didn't get enough sleep last night. If we know about immunity, that sleep
yeah,
is about optimizing immunity. So if you have a poor night's sleep tonight, you are 4 times more likely tomorrow to catch the common cold. So you don't experience the optimizing of the immune system at night. You don't feel that happening, but you just know that the next
Yeah,
day you feel physically low, and therefore that increases your likelihood of catching viruses or whatever. So that's, I think, the way you perform, the way you feel the next day is dependent on your sleep. So it doesn't matter what happens at night. What matters is how you feel during the day, and that I think there's it. It may seem strange to say from somebody who's given their whole life to the study of sleep, but I think sleep. We shouldn't focus so much on the doing of sleep. We should focus on are we optimal during the day? Because that's the bit that we remember. We don't Sleep is amnestic. We don't remember being asleep. We don't have
yeah,
any experience of being asleep. But what we do have is that experience of the 16, 18 hours during the day that we're awake. That's the important bit. That's when you're alive. That's, to me, what counts. What we do at night isn't really that important. So if you go in Germany, they don't have the concept of insomnia in the way that we see it. Germany, if you go to a German doctor and say, doctor, I'm not sleeping well, they will ask one question. The question is, how do you feel during the day? And if you say, oh, I feel fine during the day, the doctor will say, well, you've got no problem.
mm,
Don't worry about it. And that, I think, is the way we should look at it, is that we should view our sleep as how we feel during the day, rather than how many minutes we got, how long it took us to fall asleep, how many times we woke up. None of that's important if you feel good during the day. If you don't feel good during the day, then it is important.
definitely. So we can say that sleep is a way to control the aftermath and the repercussions of the daytime, right? It's
Yeah,
from the sleep,
absolutely.
yeah, it's from the sleep wakefulness emerges, and then how we perform, or you can say feel during the daytime, it's dictated by how well we have slept prior day, right? And the last night. So that summarization be fine, right?
Yeah, absolutely. In a way, if you think about it, when you eat a meal, you can have an experience of that meal.
Yeah.
As you are eating it, you are enjoying the meal. But essentially, once it gets to the stomach doesn't care.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
can be a roadside curry, or it can be a 3-star Michelin restaurant.
Yep.
But when it hits the stomach, it's carbohydrate, fats. The stomach goes. This is chemicals. This is not. I don't care. And the reason you've eaten food is to get nutrition to be alive.
Yep.
And so, if you were starving and if you were malnourished, it wouldn't matter to you whether it was, bread and rice or caviar and truffles. You would eat it because it's food.
Yep.
And the food does something that the body has to have. So you can have a lovely sleep, you can have a pretty bad sleep, but it doesn't matter. It's sleep. And if you feel good during the day, it doesn't matter what happened at night. In the same way, it doesn't matter what you eat. It matters that you do eat. You have to eat
Yeah.
something, but it doesn't matter, because once it's in the body, it doesn't matter. And so sleep is about how you feel during the day, how you perform, and then, as I say, That's the bit we should think about. And so, you know, I you know, some of my good friends are you know, sports scientists, St Mary's University in London, and they, you know, sleep in sports has become very fashionable.
Yeah.
But nobody can, you know, nobody can say if you sleep an extra 20 minutes, you will score more goals. So for somebody like Messi or Ronaldo or Lewandowski, I don't care how much sleep they've had if they keep scoring goals. And if they say, well, I sleep 10 hours, well, is that because you sleep 10 hours or is that because that makes you a better sportsman? And this is the thing, we want sleep to do us good,
Yeah.
rather than actually look at the daytime as to, are we doing good? Does that make sense?
100%.
We've got it the wrong way round.
Yeah, that food analogy goes hand in hand with the sleep analogy, because an egg is an egg, whether it's coming from a five-star hotel or from the roadside. But what will happen that after having that egg from the roadside, if you are having digestion issues, then that is a cause of a concern, right?
Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. We forget to live, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
We concentrate on things that aren't important, and we forget that actually, you know, sleep should be a pleasure. It should be a nice thing to do. It shouldn't be a trial. It shouldn't be a competitive sport. It should be something
Yeah.
we look forward to. We wake up, and then because we wake up feeling everything is good with the world, then everything's good with the world. Simple as that.
Definitely. I think we have to focus upon the feedback mechanism instead of a feed forward. Right? If we are
Absolutely.
facing any kind of a repercussion or aftermath, then we have to look, okay, might be something kind of wrong. If nothing is broken, why even bother to fix it in the first place?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So with that segue in mind, please guide us through the what happens in the night, right? How this sleep stages, how sleep actually pans out, because we see a lot of things, right? There is non-REM, there is REM sleep, there are multiple stages of sleep. So please guide us through this entire continuum on how sleep
Yeah.
pans out during the night.
Okay. Well, sleep um, is divided into two states. There are two different states. There is rapid eye movement sleep and there is non-rapid eye movement sleep. And then non-rapid eye movement sleep is further divided into three stages of sleep. It used to be four stages of
Yeah,
sleep from 1969 up until 2014, I think. But then it was the powers that be of the American Academy of Sleep Medicine said there were three stages of sleep. But as you use the word in your question, which is actually it's a continuum. It's a very dynamic process. So these stages are very, very artificial. They're artificial divisions. So essentially, the three stages of non-REM sleep, stages 1 to 3. Stage 1 is the transition from awake to asleep. So if you are awake and you're going to go to sleep, you'll go through stage 1 sleep. Stage 1 sleep ordinarily makes up around 3 to 5% of the night. And is the lightest stage of sleep. So if I had to wake you up in stage 1 sleep, you would say, why did you do that? I wasn't asleep. So stage 1 sleep is the sleep that you get when you're sat at your computer and your head starts dropping and
yeah,
that sort of thing. And so as I say, it's the gateway into sleep. So whenever you fall asleep, you will go through this stage 1 sleep. Next bit is stage 2 sleep, which makes up half of the night. Half of the night is spent in stage 2 sleep. Now, because of that, you would think that stage 2 sleep would be really important, because if it makes up half the night, Well, it may be important. We just don't know why. It doesn't seem to do anything that we don't do it at other times much better. But anyway, so stage 2 makes up 50% of the night. And then we get stage 3. Now, stage 3 is the important part of sleep. It makes up about 20 to 25% of the night. And it's the deep sleep. When you hear people talk about deep sleep, they're talking about stage 3, or slow wave sleep is another name for it. And slow wave sleep is the bit of sleep that makes you feel like you've had a good night's sleep. So it's the restful, recuperative part of sleep. It's also the bit of sleep that makes you feel awake during the day. So if you have your slow wave sleep, you'll feel awake during the day. And slow wave sleep, I mentioned earlier about the immune system being optimized during sleep. Well, that happens during stage 3 sleep. Talked about memory. Again, we lay our memories down in stage 3 sleep, and we grow only during that stage 3 sleep. We physically grow. So stage 3 sleep is the real important part of sleep. And if you go without a night of sleep, the next night you will make up all of your missing deep sleep, because that's how important it is. So, and so those are the 3 states of or stages. And then I say the second state is this rapid eye movement sleep. Rapid eye movement sleep gets its name from the observation that in 1953 that babies, their eyes moved very quickly backwards and forwards under the eyelid, and this was equated with us dreaming. So during rapid eye movement sleep, we have our long story dream. We have dream-like events at other stages of sleep, but they're shorter and they don't have that story. So our dreams during REM sleep can be very long, and you can only remember your dream if you wake up during your dream. So if you don't wake up, you won't experience any dreams. But you are preferentially designed to wake up in rapid eye movement sleep, in REM sleep. So if you didn't set an alarm clock this morning and you woke up naturally, you almost certainly will wake up in a dream and you will remember that dream. But the number of dreams in the night you remember depends whether you wake up in the night. Now, when you are dreaming, your dreams are real. They're as real to your mind and body as sitting here now is real. So when you have a dream, you can experience it as though it were actually happening. And you know sometimes you've woken up and you're breathing heavily, your heart is pounding, you're sweating, and you feel fear or anxiety. Well, that's because genuinely your body and brain feels that this is what's happening to you. And this is when, as I say, your brain waves, the activity of your brain during that dream can be higher than it is now listening to me talking to you. So we are really living the dream, for want of a better word. Now, there have been various theories about dreaming, but none of them hold true because, of course, we don't remember the whole of a dream. We only remember fragments, and so we can't tell somebody what we were dreaming about. We can give them an overview. So that's how the stages of sleep. Now, how that fits into a night, essentially, about 20 minutes after you've switched your light off, you should fall asleep. So a healthy adult should fall asleep within 20 minutes. Taking more than 30 minutes to fall asleep regularly would be considered a sign of insomnia. Once you have fallen asleep, you'll quickly go through your stage 1, stage 2 into a period of that stage 3 deep sleep. And that will last for probably somewhere between 30 and 90 minutes. You'll have a consolidated period of that N3 sleep. And then about 90 to 120 minutes into the night, you will have your first dream period. That may only last 10 minutes long, so you're unlikely to wake up at that time. Then you'll go back into some more of that deep sleep. And then on a roughly 90-minute cycle, you will have REM periods interspersed with that lighter stage 2 sleep. So in the latter part of the night, you're either dreaming or you're in stage 2. And in the night, your dreams can be up to 45 minutes long. And as I say, then the light stage sleep. So the first 3 hours of the night, you are predominantly in deep sleep. So you are unlikely to wake up in that first 3 hours. And also, this is when you can sleep through a thunderstorm, because you're in that deep sleep, so you're not woken up. In the latter part of the night, you're more easily woken up. And of course, at some point in the morning, you will wake up. And so that's how sleep is put together. And people talk about these sleep cycles as though they're 90 minutes, and you can get these apps that wake you up after a certain number of 90-minute cycles. Well, life is not that easy. And the sleep cycle can be anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 hours. So, sleep is individual, and it varies night to night. One night you'll have a really good night's sleep, and the next night you might not have as good a night's sleep, even though nothing has changed. So it's impossible to. It's not like a fingerprint. It's not unique. Your sleep every night is slightly different, and really, all that you need to do is, if you give your body and brain the opportunity to sleep, then your body and brain will get what it needs. So if you need 8 hours sleep, you have to be in bed for at least 8 hours.
Yeah.
If you're not, you won't get the sleep you need, and that will lead to problems. So people say, oh, can you increase deep sleep, or can you do this to REM sleep? No, you can't. You don't have active control of the stages of sleep. But if you have a good sleep, your brain will get what it needs, and it will be able to do it the way it needs to do it.
Definitely. So that was really, really great explanation of what sleep is, and describing that those 4 stages, basically 2 main stages, non-rapid eye movement and rapid eye movement, including within the non-rapid eye movement, we have now 3 according to AASM, right? Because the last third and fourth is now merged into one. So,
Yeah, I mean this is a very strange thing. The original staging of sleep was in the late 1960s, and it was based on very little data, because at that time there was very little sleep recording going on, and now there's been millions of sleep records, and we've made sleep simpler rather than more complex. There's a paper from a Japanese researcher that shows, just in the period of time that it takes you to fall asleep, so that transition from being awake into stage 1, that there are 9 identifiable stages in that period of a couple of minutes. So you imagine what sleep must be, how complex sleep really must be. And yet the AASM, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, combine stages 3 and stages 4 together, which makes no sense, because it's not reflective of
Data we have.
of
Yeah.
what's happening in the brain, and that's a very strange thing. But again, because people don't notice the difference between stage 3 and stage 4, and you can't do anything about the relative amounts of them. It doesn't matter. You as an
Yeah.
individual, there's nothing you can do about it.
Definitely, definitely. So, and along with that, how does these stages align with our circadian rhythm? Because circadian rhythm for each and every individual is a bit different, right? Someone who is living around the equator versus someone living around the north and north pole or the south pole, their circadian rhythm differs, and especially the people who are living, working in a non-conventional job like air hostess or even captains. They have a different sort of a circadian rhythm because of their work. So how does this sleep stages align with the circadian rhythm?
Okay, circadian rhythm. And the circadian rhythm, it just means about a day, circa, about, diem, day. So it's around the 24-hour period. Now, our sleep is governed by two mechanisms. One is the circadian rhythm, and the other is the sleep homeostat. So with circadian rhythm, so essentially we have various rhythms that are described across a day, across 24 hours. The most obvious one is our sleep wake. You know, we are awake during the day, we're asleep at night. That's the biggest or the most obvious difference between day and night. But also, we have circadian rhythms in things like hunger. We're hungry during the day, we're not hungry during the night. Our body temperature changes. So at night, we need to lose body temperature in order to sleep. And so around 2 to 4 in the morning, we have our lowest body temperature. So that describes a rhythm. And various hormones like melatonin, which is involved in helping us sleep, but also cortisol, the so-called stress hormone. All of these fluctuate across a 24-hour period. Now, there are things called ultradian rhythms, which are rhythms that
Yeah.
are shorter, um, but we don't really experience those because of that bigger circadian rhythm, but there are ultradian rhythms. So our circadian rhythm is essentially set by light. So when the sun comes up, the sky is blue. Now it's the 5th of December here in the UK, and if I look out my window, the sky is not blue. It's pretty grey, but
Yeah.
even that is blue. And our blue light from the sun tells the brain it's daytime. And you only need a couple of minutes of this. And the brain goes, right, it's daytime, I'm awake. Now, at night, when the sun sets, we lose that blue light. So every sunset you've ever seen has always been orange and purple and red. There's no blue. Now, this blue light suppresses melatonin. Melatonin is not the sleep hormone. Melatonin doesn't put you to sleep. Melatonin tells your brain and body it's time to go to sleep. So melatonin is suppressed during the day. When the sun goes down, we lose the blue light, and that says to the brain, okay, we're going to go to sleep at some point. And the pineal gland, which is a very small bit of the brain, deep in the brain, produces melatonin. So about 3 to 4 hours after the sun's gone down, the brain is ready to sleep and the body is ready to sleep, and you will sleep. So that's your circadian rhythm, I say, which is affected by light. Now, of course, if you work shift work or if you travel across continents, then your body's inherent 24-hour rhythm gets out of synchronization with the light and dark cycle. So your body thinks it's breakfast time whereas the new place you are at, it's actually dinner time. And
Yeah.
your brain goes, I don't get that because and so there is that mismatch. So that's what jet lag and shift work are. It's just a mismatch between what's happening light and dark where you are and what your body 24-hour rhythm. So that's the circadian rhythm. The other one I'd say is your sleep homeostat. Your sleep homeostat is basically what in the military is called time on task. So you have a build-up of sleepiness. The longer you're awake, the more sleepy you become. So
Yeah.
it builds up. So around about 16 to 18 hours into a day, the body says, I'm now sleepy. So if that feeling of sleepiness matches up with your circadian rhythm, where you're on your downward phase into sleep, then everything is good. And if we stay in one place and we have a routine, the typical, 9 till 5 working day, go home, go to bed around 11, then that respects both our circadian rhythm and our sleep homeostat. So we get sleepy when the body wants sleep, and that's good. Anything that messes up with this will make it more difficult. So as I say, for the circadian rhythm, that's odd hours, shift work, jet lag. For the sleep homeostat, it's a reduced pressure to sleep. So if you need 8 hours sleep at night, but you actually have a 2-hour sleep during the day, then you're only going to need 6 hours sleep at night.
Yeah.
So you've used up, so there's less pressure for you to get the 8 hours, and therefore you'll find it more difficult to sleep, or you'll sleep for less time at night. So these systems work. I mean, the homeostat works because it's a function of time, but the circadian rhythm persists. So if you were to fly from India to London, it would take you probably 5 to 10 days to adapt to UK time. When you fly from London to India, it will take much closer to 10 days for you to recover from that, because flying that way is more difficult. So that's the problem, that your body does or has the ability to adapt, but it takes time. So for jet lag, that's okay. But for shift work, where often one of the most prevalent ways of working shifts is to have a rotating shift.
Yeah.
You're not permanently. If you're doing 4 days of days, 4 days of nights, your body just doesn't ever get the opportunity to recover and to adapt, and that means that you're not going to feel good ever. You're just going to be in that permanent state of feeling out of alignment with what's going on. So that's the problem. That ordinarily, our circadian rhythm is simply set by daylight, and so our circadian rhythm has the ability to adapt. And you mentioned people living near the equator, where the days remain pretty constant in length. Up north in in the UK, we the days get longer and shorter by 3 minutes a day, but our circadian rhythm runs slightly long. So it's not exactly 24 hours. So we have the ability across the days to gently adapt between, the long days of summer and the short days of winter. So we have that ability, but it's only for very small changes, bigger changes take, as they take a time to adapt to.
Definitely. And we have also seen that we call circadian rhythm as a 24 hours rhythm, but it is not complete 24 hours, right? It can be a bit longer, it can be a bit shorter. Like what are your points on how much, like how many hours does our circadian rhythm on an average exist? Is it really 24 hours, or there is some kind of a plus minus error over there?
The average is 24 hours and 17 minutes.
Okay.
But again, that's an average. And this, as I say, gives us just that flexibility for the lengthening over the season. But there are, differences. There are some people who have shorter and longer circadian rhythms. There are some people who have a condition called non-24-hour circadian rhythm. So their circadian rhythm doesn't follow a 24-hour pattern. Basically, they just free run, as it's known. Their sleep changes across weeks and progressively across the 24-hour period. And the other thing is that there are people who have different strength of circadian rhythm. Now, if you imagine a circadian rhythm is like a sine wave, so you have a peak around midday and you have a trough around midnight. Well, for some people that's a lot flatter, so there isn't as much difference between day and night. So these people are pretty immune to things like jet lag.
Okay.
Because there isn't much difference. Or shift work. And so these people may self-select because working shifts is difficult for some people, whereas for others, they seem to do it okay, or like, airline pilots, anything like that. So it may be that people just self-select. Some people can cope, other people can't. And I know a friend of mine, when we were doing jet lag studies, she didn't have much of the amplitude, magnitude of the amplitude, and she, you couldn't really tell the difference between the day that she was, fully adapted and the day that she was badly adapted. Whereas for me, I felt terrible for a few days and then felt better. She just felt pretty constant. So, as I say, we're all individuals, but, the circadian rhythm, as I say, because it is set by light in most people, runs pretty regularly. It resets back each day when the sun comes up.
Hello, listeners. I hope you would have liked this episode of the podcast series, and if you did, please feel free to share it with your friends, families, and your colleagues so that they can also get benefit from the science based discussion that we just had. With that in mind, this podcast, along with all the episodes, is now available on all the major platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, along with the audio-visual media YouTube. So, with that in mind, let me bid adieu for this time, and I will see you in the next episode.